Earlier today, we also saw the National Assembly, especially in the House of Representatives, asking for the rescue of the pupils. The members of the House of Reps are calling on the federal government and security agencies to bring the abducted students and teachers of the Baptist Nursery and Primary School, Community Grammar School, CLA in Yawota, and Early Primary School in Oyo back home alive. What is troubling is the trend and the manner in which this has happened. It looks so much like the modus operandi of some groups, extreme group in some part of Nigeria, especially in the northeast region of the country. They operated in some north central and northwestern region of the country. But this happening in the heart of Nigeria, southwest, means a lot. And what does this mean exactly? Let's speak with a man who is an expert in violent extremism and on extremism policy, a lawyer and a security consultant. Bulama Bukati is live for us virtually tonight. Mr. Bukati, thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's indeed heart-wrenching and troubling. What we are seeing is a scenario not so unfamiliar with us. We've seen school kidnappings and abductions in several parts of the country. In the northwestern region of the country seems to have received the most heat when it comes to school abductions. And the question a lot of people will be asking is, are schools safe for our children? And there are a lot of policies the government have made over the past years at our administration about how to secure school. The Safe School Initiative was initiated at some point, but has it worked? But the fundamental issue here, Mr. Bukati, I'm worried. This looks like the fingerprints and handwriting of ISWAP or allied and associate groups. What do you make of the modus operandi that we saw in Oyo State?
Yeah, I mean, Sean, you are right. As you said in the introduction, what is happening in our country is very, very worrying. And whatever we have been doing over the past 12 years to keep our schools safe is clearly not working. But to start with your question, the Nigerian Army headquarters has said that this abduction in Oyo State is linked to Boko Haram. If it is Boko Haram that is responsible, then my theory or my best guess or informed analysis is that it will be the Sadiku group. The Sadiku group is led by someone called Abubakar Saidu, who is originally an indigenous of Borno State, but who was commissioned in 2014 by Abubakar Shekau, the then leader of Boko Haram / ISWAP, to travel from the northeastern part of Nigeria and establish a Boko Haram cell in north central Nigeria. And he was specifically asked by Shekau to go and court members of the Darul Islam. You remember the Darul Islam, which was an Orthodox Muslim group that isolated themselves in Makwa, Niger State, who were disbanded in 2009. I am sure everyone will remember the national story at the time when they were disbanded and quick notice was given to them by the Niger State government. Now, Sadiq was commissioned by Shekau, that is Abubakar Said was commissioned by Shekau to go and court those groups and recruit them into Boko Haram. Most members of the Darul Islam did not get recruited into Boko Haram, did not buy into Boko Haram's ideology, but many people amongst them, some of them agreed and they subscribed to Boko Haram's ideology. And now from that time on, Abubakar Saidu continued going back and forth between northeastern Nigeria, the Boko Haram epicenter, and north central Nigeria until he succeeded in establishing a Boko Haram camp in Niger State. They were originally in the Alawa forest, and then they recently moved to the Kainji National Park. And you know, from the Kainji National Park, you have many different routes that will lead you up to the old Oyo National Park. And if Boko Haram is responsible, then it is this group. I think they likely traveled from the Kainji forest into the old Oyo National Park and then went and pounced on their victim. I agree with you that it is Boko Haram, classic Boko Haram modus operandi, is more likely to be the Sadiku group. The Sadiku group is allied to the Shekau faction of Boko Haram that is called JAS, Jama'atu Ahlus Sunnah Lid-Da'awati wal Jihad, rather than Islamic State West Africa Province.
But what is troubling with my research and talking to those who know the inner workings of ISWAP, the Director Group, the Boko Haram Group, is the fact that ideology and philosophy drive them. And what exactly also give them some kind of cover is the environment, which are caves, forests, which the northwestern region of the country and northeastern Nigeria really gives them and harbors them, which allows them to operate freely for several years. What I'm confused about is the motive, the philosophy, the ideology that has driven them to some part of the southwest Nigeria, especially this dastardly act they've committed in southwest Nigeria. Can you wrap your head around, based on your understanding, your research, and the knowledge that you have of this group, why the choice of your state? Yes, you look at the route, but then how far can they go? Can the forest in southwestern, the vegetation and the forestry and the landscape in Oyo State harbor them for a longer time?
Yeah, I mean, so Sheon, there are lots of things in this question. Let's start with the ideology first. There is an ideological as well as logistical reason why Boko Haram started attacking schools. The first, let's remember that even the name Boko Haram means Western-styled education is forbidden in Islam, which is false. Now, Boko Haram, from the very beginning when they started their preaching in the early 2000s in Borno State, their first and major target when it comes to their violent rhetorics were schools. And then we saw them starting to attack schools. Even before the Chibok abduction, we saw dastardly attacks, gruesome attacks in places like Buniadi, where they killed 59 school children. They slaughtered 59 school children and burned some of them alive. And then we saw the Chibok kidnapping. And then we saw Dapchi, and then we saw other kidnappings, including the ones we saw in northwestern Nigeria, some of which are allied to Boko Haram, or in some of which Boko Haram was involved. So first is the ideology. But what Boko Haram also understood from the Chibok kidnapping in 2014 was that abducting school children can bring attention and can serve as a propaganda material for them. And of course, the Nigerian security forces have been saying, we are defeating Boko Haram, we have succeeded here, we have succeeded there. And there is some data showing that Boko Haram's fatality figures have fallen. What can they do to rile up sentiment? What can they do that can give them a propaganda material that will give them a golden ticket for propaganda? Attack an area of Nigeria that no one thought you can ever attack. And I think they did that for propaganda and also for them to demonstrate that they are still powerful and are able to penetrate areas we thought they may not be able to penetrate. So the second issue is propaganda. The third issue, Boko Haram also understood from the Chibok, the Dapchi, and other kidnappings they were involved in that they can make money out of school children, that they can force governments to negotiate with them, to pay them millions of dollars or pounds, as we saw in the Chibok kidnapping and other kidnappings in northeastern Nigeria. And also, they saw that they can use school kidnappings to force governments to free their commanders who are in detention. That's what happened in the case of the Chibok. For example, in Chibok, credible reports say the Buhari administration paid about 3 million euros for the release of the 100 and something Chibok girls that were released. But also we know that 5 senior Boko Haram commanders were released from custody as part of the Chibok deal. And so making profit is another reason. But also let's remember that these groups are opportunistic. And the opportunity here is their ability to travel through the forest in the Kainji area into the old Oyo National Park and target a school there. Of course, it may not be unrelated to the fact that they think this is an area that people think is safe and therefore there is no security presence as in other areas of Nigeria, and therefore they launch their attack there. The final point you raised, Sheon, which is very important, is the role of the old Oyo National Park. Everywhere you see Boko Haram operating, that area has to be either a border region where security presence is weak, or it is a mismanaged forest or park. Whether it's the Zambiza forest, whether the Alawa Forest, whether the Kainji National Park, or even when you go to places like Zampara Kasina, all of these bandits are operating in national parks and forests that have been mismanaged for years, and these have become their safe havens. And that's why Boko Haram was able to use the old Oyo National Park to launch this attack. And I can tell you, they would either harbor and keep those children inside the old Oyo National Park, or they will transport them to the Kainji Forest, the Kainji Park, where they already have a camp, and will continue to hold them there.
Now, let me give some insight, because when this kind of situation happens, you look at the timing, and I quickly want us to wrap up this conversation because of my next interview. Let me look at the timelines, because people will say the very few hours, the very first few hours of this kind of incident are very crucial in the rescue operation, because if you do not allow them to make this movement happen, then you can be able to get the rescue. So it's 18 days in captivity for these people. And the attack happened on the 15th of May in Orire local government area of Oyo State, within the Ogbomoso axis of this. Ogbomoso alone has about 3 local governments, so it's a large expanse of place. Ogbomoso is bordered by Yenkori and Ilorin in Kwara State, meaning there's a proximity to Kwara State, but it's not exactly on the area where these bandits have really been attacking Kwara communities, because it's in the Irakpono Ifelodun area of Kwara State, which is closer to some part of Kogi, Ekiti, and Oshun. But it's on the other side, towards the Ilorin, that this attack happened. But it was coordinated, Mr. Bulama. And it happened in 3 rural communities of Hawe Sinle, Yawota, Alaosa, axis of Orire, LGA. Now, there are 3 schools that were involved. And this attack happened simultaneously. That means it was planned, premeditated. They used motorbikes. In fact, the man who resisted, who had motorcycle, they wanted to use it, he resisted, they killed him. Now, what do we know also? Over 40 people are in captivity. 39 pupils also, as 7 teachers. We understand that one of the teachers may have been killed in captivity. But all of this happened. How did they move them? Where did they move them to? All of these will be very critical. And the federal government has said 1,000 forest guard. The question is it too little, too late? Or what exactly do you make of federal government's response?
Yeah, I mean, I know slightly the area you describe, Sheun, because I have been to Ogomosho several times. I have been to the Ladoke Akintola University in Ogomosho for students' activities when I was a student at Bayero University several times. One thing you will notice, because I traveled by road, is that the roads are very bad and that the forests are densely forested. Many of the areas are densely forested, and that is the classic formula. That is the classic formula for violent extremist groups and terrorist groups. And you are right that the first few hours are very important, but also the first few days, because we know from the accounts, the narrative of the Chibok girls, from the Dapchi girls and others, that they worked for, or they were forced to work for days. I mean, they were only allowed to rest for a few hours, and then they were forced to work again, because they wanted to take them into the heart of the forest, where it will be very hard for our security forces to access them. And President Tinubu made a very important statement when he first got into office. He said the Nigerian army has to change their philosophy into guerrilla warfare rather than the conventional warfare they have been fighting. Our soldiers are still using heavy machinery, heavy equipment, heavy vehicle that find it very difficult to penetrate the forest, because it is muddy, because there are no access roads, and these groups are operating in smaller vehicles, lighter vehicles. Some of them walk a lot, and therefore it is very difficult to access them where you want to get them. But Sean, you also mentioned this question of the Safe Schools initiative. You and I have talked about this previously. The idea that you can isolate schools from the rest of the society and protect them from attacks while attacks continue in the rest of the society is a farcical idea. It's impossible. If you want to protect schools, you have to protect everyone in the society. That's why the Safe Schools initiative never worked, because there are hundreds of thousands of schools in Nigeria, primary, secondary, and tertiary institutions. And if you want to isolate each school and protect it, you have to deploy hundreds of soldiers with all the equipment and logistics that will need to protect just that school.
Yeah.
And that is practically impossible. And therefore, what you need is to tackle the root causes from the is to tackle these groups from the root, which is fighting them inside the forest. And finally, 1,000 forest guards may tactically be good, but strategically they are not going to work. We know that even our soldiers have found it very difficult to fight these groups. Forest guards that are not very well trained or armed cannot work or succeed in this kind of environment. Even though we know that they are aware of the local terrain, they are very good at the local geography because they are local, but you need training, you need experience. And when these kinds of attacks happen, Sheun, and then you have an announcement, the tendency is that you will prioritize the number, the figure of 1,000 over good vetting, good training, and proper arming them. Yeah. And if you don't do that, you are not going to succeed, unfortunately. We need to completely change our national security architecture, Sheun. Whatever we have done over the last 20 years has not worked. President Tinubu needs to work on the national security architecture and reform it just like he did to our tax system.
All right. So I'll allow you to go, but declining state of emergency like Khan is asking, is that another option that we could explore?
A state of emergency that is not backed by action is useless.
All right.
So if a state of emergency will be declared, Sheun, what you need is to use the powers. And you can use the powers a state of emergency will give you, even right now under the Terrorism Prevention Act. And so you don't need a state of emergency. If you are going to declare a state of emergency for the oil crisis, then you need to declare a state of emergency in more than 20 states in northern Nigeria as well. And that will not work if it is not backed by action.
Bulama Bukati is researched heavily and widely on violent extremism in Africa and helped to set up policies on extremism on the situation in northeastern Nigeria as a lawyer too and a security consultant. Many thanks to Mr. Bukati for joining us tonight on the program.
It's always a pleasure joining you, Sheun. Thank you.
I appreciate it.